Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Dwayne the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would find myself in my former UK physical level house recreated. On the real side, our recreated homes tend represent the consciousness that from the moment we initially inserted a body form in the simulator for awareness to animate through, so we have been building the consciousness. For the consciousness is the engine room of our simulated experience, in that the ideas it contains, either as created by ourselves via the idea generating body vehicles, or ideas created by others we have agreed with, that then become a consciousness installed. So through the body forms, also effected from consciousness, can these ideas be formatted into a simulation we then experience. The consciousness then is akin to a computer, where every idea we have placed within it that affects our lifetimes of experience is retained. Each lifetime around, we have a new body form, a pristine and idea-free memory vehicle, as that which we had experienced from the ideas installed lifetimes prior, has now been transferred to a backup filing system, if you will, the subconscious. Through the free will generating of ideas via the body vehicle mechanics, as this removes us from the nowness everything real awareness position, that which we all actually are, and animates through all consciousness affected body type, so we are positioned as the formulated secondary, though fabricated, personal self. The alternating between the two positions, that of the personal self as we create the ideas, where we are momentarily placed within the segregated parts of the isness everything as made possible through creation and the body forms, and as we cease idea generating, we are returned to our real awareness true being positions, and everything life is, aside from the pieces and parts, the ideas of creation, so we can learn to recognize the difference between the two positions through a comparison as made possible with the simulators and the personal self-consciousness, and ultimately recognition of the true reality everything can be so, as is the real purpose of the simulators. For as we have fully embraced the consciousness, the secondary created personal self for the longest time, we are in full agreement with everything, every idea the consciousness comprises of, and are the effect then of its entirety, including the vaster bulk of it, that being the subconscious, which houses every lifetime of idea agreement prior to our current one. The process of awareness does involve a facing and releasing of the consciousness of ideas, but despite this, our consciousness design, its idea makeup, doesn't change. We simply are divorcing attachment to the ideas it comprises of, that we are unshackled tapline-wise from creation. As for every idea we hold to, we remain its effects, and the isolated idea pieces of the whole isness everything can only be experienced in the simulators, where we then resign ourselves. The real side recreated houses, representing the consciousness, will provide indication as to our agreement placement, who can access our recreated homes, as absent of the idea of an individual in a consciousness. They cannot feature in our experiences as the effect, and oftentimes we can be apprised of idea agreements that we have perhaps inadvertently established, or that are present that we are unconscious of, that are yet to be determined, unveiled, and released, where these ideas will present themselves and their nature within the confines of our real side houses. I shared on a previous real side experience that I seemed to be practicing the ability where, even though operating other dimensionally, when awareness vacates the physical level affording physical body vehicle, we can still interact and engage with the physical level, either able to manipulate it as though a poltergeist were operating, or indeed communicate verbally with the physical level positioned individuals without presenting an actual physical level based form, or even the possibility of manifesting on the physical from the real side. This then would potentially allow for us to engage with any individual on the physical, regardless of where they happen to be, or indeed interaction with the physical level if such was perhaps required. The advantages of such would be somewhat incalculable. And although I revealed the symbology of the recreated houses on the real side, as generally where our recreated homes are involved, this will be the representation, in this case, as it was with the previous real side experience, where I was verbally communicating with individuals who were based on the physical from the real side. I would be doing similar again, as though this particular practice is an ongoing theme, and where perhaps it may be a necessary skill for what is to transpire creationally and on the earth. For as I was operating on the real side, so I would be manifesting the semblance of a form, and somewhat floating around my former house like an apparition, presenting myself to my parents, and through a verbal exchange, so they would determine as to my identity, as my form would be phasing in and out as though my inability to sustain it. Because my form wasn't operating entirely within the frequency range that is the physical level, but enough that it appeared apparitional, that which would present as a solid to a physical level body form would not be so for me, and I could pass through the walls, the ceiling, etc., and eventually I would exit the house and fly around the environments surrounding it for a few moments. As I said, this was seemingly a practice in regards to the ability of interacting and engaging with physical-based individuals and environmental features, while as vacated awareness-wise from the physical body and operating from the real side. I would then find myself entering a large warehouse-style building, and within one of the chambers, in the heart of it, would I find Jeremy and Dwayne. The chamber they were in, and indeed, as it was with most of the rooms within the overall building, seemed to be that of a very technological nature, as though for the purposes of highly advanced scientific research and application. And as I engaged with Dwayne and Jeremy, as it transpired, a computer of utmost importance had been removed from the overall building, sequestered away, and its whereabouts, and indeed who or what had been responsible, hadn't been determined. The impressions were that this was a future view, in that, as things progress on the physical level Earth, so Dwayne will be more so utilizing advanced technology, either as made possible via the funding, or perhaps made available through the various alien contacts we are establishing and will at some point be directly working with. For over the years have I been shown on the real side such potentiality of Dwayne being able to access advanced technology to utilize beneficially awareness speaking on behalf of humanity, and this would be another viewpoint then of this eventual possibility, the large and very likely Earth-based building housing the technology that it did, but with the expected skullduggery from those who would always seek to undermine Dwayne's efforts, the stealing of what was an essential computer and whatever it contained, that it was of the utmost value. As I said, the initial scene was the continuation of the practice of not only engaging with anyone physical level based from the real side, but the ability to interact and exact change to physical level environments also, and now it seemed in this possible future view physical level scene, this very practice was being put to the test. For Dwayne, Jeremy and I would form a circle, we would join hands, and from what was then a physical level position, we would self-induce a state of being where our awareness could vacate the physical body forms. We would then be operating from the real side, though our physical bodies remaining standing and in the circle seemingly, and we would attempt to locate the physical level location of the stolen computer. Rather a version of what is referred to as remote viewing, and I would find myself exiting the physical body form, traversing through dazzling conduits of light, and although still retained as operating on the real side, I would be viewing through to the physical from my other dimensionally placed position and determine the whereabouts of the computer. As it transpired, the computer had indeed been stolen. It had been relieved of the valuable data it had contained, and rather thrown out with the trash, nestled amongst various garbage bags, etc., in whatever earth position it was, the details as to its location not revealed in this experience, but perhaps would be so when the moment comes Where this actually takes place, a future physical level potentiality as I surmised. The scene would fade, and now I would find myself in what seemed to be another building, though gargantuan in its size and proportions. Present within would be all manner of body forms. Some were familiar, appearance-wise, humans, certain of the alien body types, as depicted in film or image, or as encountered on the real side. Other body types, beyond my personal self-ability, with the experiential references available to it to describe. Impressions revealed that every body form within this vast building were trapped, resigned to its confines, and that this creation of containment was by the hand of a being who had not only the ability to create such, but to glean the agreement required where other body types could be brought to this containment structure and rendered as unable to leave. For every individual is the decider of their experience, as I said in the beginning, that through the ideas as generated by themselves via the body vehicles, or the ideas as created by others and agreed to, are effected the corresponding simulated experiences. The only way a being can have us the recipient of situations as created by them, we rather would not be experiencing, as we do have to agree with their ideas to be the effect of them, is to have us agree with the idea inadvertently, indirectly. Oftentimes, surface ideas may seem to have a beneficial merit, but can be laced with unseen ideas in affiliation. Agreeing with religion in any shape or form, for example, is agreement with what it actually represents, death and restriction, and we then experience far more than we one-dimensionally bargained for. And for everything created, every idea that is present and available for our agreement, so that which created it must also be present, as you can't have an idea effected into a simulation without that which generated it, a consciousness. Each consciousness will be of a particular design, an overall intentionality, and as we agree with the idea, we agree with the consciousness, we take on the program of intentionality, and should the consciousness be of a controlling, dominating proclivity, we are effectively agreeing to play out this intentionality scenario with this individual, and we experience being the subject of their consciousness intent of subjugation, domination, or control. And once this agreement has been secured, like all idea agreements, consciousness installed, it will be retained. The lifetimes will go by, we become unconscious of this agreement, as it is transferred to the subconscious, and we remain always as the potential effect of it. We can at any moment be subject to a domination, or whatever the parameters of the agreement entails, physical level or real side, until the moment comes where through the process of awareness it is released along with all ideas of the consciousness. Whatever the mechanism by which this agreement to the idea that was containment in this vast building-like structure was secured, the being whose idea it was had trawled quite the array of body types across multi-dimensional creation. Realistically, then, if we find ourselves the recipient of unsavoury circumstances, we have but to determine the idea agreement that is effecting such to be, and sever it. But with most beings unaware of the cause and effect nature of the agreement-based simulator and their respective experiences within it, and especially that most are oblivious of not only the subconscious storehouse of agreements from all lifetimes prior that they are still the unconscious effects of, but how to go about the releasing of such, which really can only be achieved through the real intent established through the personal self to recognize the ears, which by default involves an automatic releasing of that which holds us to the simulators, every idea that the consciousness, including the subconscious, contains. And so most will be somewhat at the mercy of those who have determined the simulators, cause and effect, and agreement-based principles, such as whatever being it was who had the agreement whereby these various and assorted body types could be contained in the structure they found themselves within. For what purpose wasn't made apparent, but I had no general impression that those contained were the more notorious dark force affiliated breed, just your average run-of-the-mill personal self-immersed individuals operating through their various body forms and bumbling through creation relatively unconsciously, the effects of everything and including this particular real side situation. And perhaps were they physical level operating individuals also, they may not even be aware that this is what the other vehicles or aspects of themselves are resigned to. Or perhaps even as a situation that although they are experiencing now in reality, through the consciousness affected physical level with its additional time and space factors that present as a delay from cause to effect, from the physical level view perspective, they are as yet not experiencing this contained situation, but effects that although manifested now will catch up eventually, perhaps as they transition from the physical, so this containment predicament will become as their experiential view. No impressions were afforded as to the inclination of the being whose creation and containment this was, and furthermore did I have the sense that attempting to provide the means of these body forms extrication, the new you and associated consciousness agreement releasing would be futile. All personal self immersed, as I said, with no impressions that any of them wanted to be anything more than their consciousness of fabricated illusions. I would mingle for a time, then would investigate fully the vast containment structure I and these other body forms were within, and would come upon a large door hundreds of feet in height. This presented as not only the exit, but that which would lead me to the being whose creation this was, a door none of these trapped within could breach, but through the real awareness, which is part of the everything isness, which permeates through all ideas of consciousness, as they affect every form and feature, so every idea is available to the real awareness, and this door that seemed so very impassable would not be so with the oversight the real awareness could afford. As the door was technological in its nature, and with the correct application of technological know-how, so I was able to open it. It would swing open, but the body forms, seemingly still resigned to the structure, through the idea agreement effecting their predicament still retained, as though they either were unable to see the open door, or even the door itself, as though a feature made visible to myself only. I would pass through the large entrance afforded, and into what lay beyond. I didn't then come into the presence of the being whose containment structure it was, as I expected. Instead, I found myself in a large university-style building. This wasn't one of the guide-created and managed universities, where the sharing of the year's references and support of all those on their awareness processes is a constant, but more so a kind of magical orientated, other dimensional school. It seemed I had established myself within it, but as a kind of infiltrator, in that I had qualified for the position by whatever means this had been accomplished, but I had no actual intention of learning the magical arts as provided within the school, more so that I could attain some of the books and reference material that was made available to the students. In reality, anything created has no value other than another comparison to recognize the true reality by, for the isness is aside from anything, any idea generated in the simulators, regardless of the idea's nature, be it good, bad, or indifferent. But if certain creations, as decided through consciousness, can be beneficial, in that they can be an aid to greater creational survivability, they are often worth pursuing, and certain of the material as available via the magical school could serve in this capacity. In what way exactly wasn't specified, but I had in my possession a particular tome or grimoire that could be very instrumental in all manner of ways, perhaps even in regards to our galactic orientated practices of saving the earth, and perchance the very simulator from implosion, or at least offset it to a degree that every body type within has more time to recognize the years, etc. By all accounts, this was a book I shouldn't have taken, even as I successfully maintained the pretense of a keen student, and the impressions of a teacher or other demanding its return, but my intention was to now abandon the school with the grimoire, as though this was the very book, amongst others, I had wanted to lay my hands upon, and so unnecessary was it for me to return. There the experience would end, and what comes of all this may be revealed at a later moment, perhaps my audience with the being who had contained the various body types, and wherever that may lead, to the application of what the grimoire contained. But if nothing else, everything experienced here, and indeed all simulation, physical level and real side, are just further objective viewpoint comparisons to recognize the years from.